Welcome back to Veterans Forum, a program by veterans, about veterans, for veterans and their families. I'm your co-host, Bob West, with Jerry Devlin. Ray Chattery is out on assignment. We're here to provide you and your family with important information on programs, legislation, benefits, and support available to you by introducing leaders in our community. Jerry, who do we have with us today?
We're very fortunate tonight, Bob, to have with us Andy Martell, who is, of course, a resident of Bowie and is one of the many, many active veterans in this city. He's primarily associated with the AMVETS, and you've been state commander, national commander, or state commander, or both?
State commander of AMVETS.
State commander of AMVETS.
And a national district.
And has been in the Veterans Commission for many, many years. He is, like many of us, came to this area from the service. He served 20 plus years in the Army and retired as a lieutenant colonel, which for a guy like me with an E4 is the stratosphere. And he is a graduate of the great University of Maine at Orono, Maine. And we're happy tonight to have with us Andy Martell.
Good to be here. Thank you.
Welcome, Andy, once again.
Thank you.
So let's get started with the AMVETS, because that's a little different organization from the other veterans service organizations. So why don't you tell our viewers what the AMVETS is and what you need to be a member of the AMVETS.
Okay. So AMVETS is a very similar organization to all the other veteran service organizations, with the exception of how people get in. A lot of the veteran service organizations require you to have served during a particular period of time, or during a particular era, or in a particular theater, for that matter, at times. AMVETS is much wider than that. You can join AMVETS if you have honorably served in the Armed Forces of the United States anytime since 1944. Regardless of where you might have served, for how long you might have served, in what theater you might have served, or whether or not you could have served simply here in the United States, and I don't mean to say simply. In addition to that, you can join AMVETS if you're in the National Guard. You can join AMVETS if you're in the reserves. As long as you have served honorably in those organizations, you can join the American veterans.
Now, how long do you have to serve?
I believe the minimum time for, you're talking specifically
Yes.
about National Guard and Reserves, I believe the minimum time is about 180 days.
Okay.
All right, so that's six months of accumulated time. But really, it's the piece of paper that discharges you from that organization that says, if you are discharged honorably from that organization for whatever reason at whatever time, then you're eligible to join American Veterans.
Okay, and what is the mission of the AMVETS?
Well, our mission's similar to all of the other ones, is to try and help veterans within the United States in all kinds of facets. Some of them is to go before Congress and help them earn their benefits or maintain their benefits and keep the benefits that they've already earned. All of us try to do that up on the Capitol Hill. Difficult times, big fights all the time. But the other part is to try and help them through whatever they may be going through, whether or not veterans are in hospitals, homes, recovering mentally or physically. We try and help them there as well, whether or not that's through money, support of an organization that's doing the actual work, or visiting, bringing gifts, bringing something that they could use, something that would occupy their time, something that keeps them busy while they're in their stay, while they have nothing to do in those organizations. We have a whole series of programs for veterans, both in terms of education, in terms of education for their children, scholarships, lots of programs throughout the United States.
Famous for the baseball program.
Pardon me?
Famous for the baseball program. They've really nationally recognized baseball programs,
And
like the American Legion.
And then the other thing is like the DAV has vans and they take vets back and forth, okay? Or service officers like most of us have. So you have other individuals who are professionally trained to do other aspects of this veteran support.
We do in some portions of the United States, not everywhere. Some of that depends upon how how well that particular state is organized. But we have career centers throughout the United States. There are 40 different career centers now to be able to help especially young veterans coming out of the service right now, but not necessarily young, to be able to try and build a new career, get education that would get them to a different place in their lives, and different jobs and different facets. So yeah, and we have people trained in order to be able to get them to do that.
And historically, it's significant that the AMVETS were founded at the end of World War II.
Yes.
And much of the reason was the American Legion was not particularly welcoming to World War II veterans, and they were kind of politically hidebound. And the American Legion, the AMVETS were a lot more progressive in seeking benefits and representing the issues that were important to younger veterans.
Yeah, yeah. There was a clash at the end.
It's
of World
really
War
interesting
II.
how veterans organizations take different positions. One of the greatest things Congress has ever done in the history of the United States, in terms of its effect, was the World War II GI Bill, which trained 600,000 engineers alone, provided housing like where we're sitting now, and all these wonderful things. It was primarily an American Legion movement. Now, the DAV opposed the GI Bill.
Yeah.
Because they felt that giving these broad-based benefits would diminish the veterans, the disability pensions for disabled veterans. And even Franklin D. Roosevelt, because nobody had any clear idea what the ultimate cost would be. But it paid for itself just over and over and over again with tax receipts you got from work.
Yeah, historically, it's an interesting look at all that stuff because AMVETS, for instance, was chartered for World War II veterans.
Yeah.
And then at the end of the Korean War, you had to go back to Congress and
Yeah.
get rechartered to include Korean War veterans. And then at the end of the Vietnam era, then you had to go back and get rechartered for Vietnam until AMVETS, at least, went back finally to Congress and got rechartered for simply honorably discharged veterans rather than an era or a time or a particular war. So that now we're not bound. It hasn't hamstrung us for the newer battlefields that we've had recently. So we're pretty well off. In fact, we're well off enough that the AMVETS national membership is one of the few that has actually increased over the last couple of years rather than decreased.
Yeah, we have Marine Corps League. We fight out kind of a holding action, and some organizations, like the Purple Heart, they really are hurting.
Yes.
A friend of mine was whatever they call the local detachment commander. He was the only officer who was under 90.
Well,
Yeah.
when you think about smaller associations, the Vietnam Security Police Association is pretty small. I have a life membership card. It came with an expiration date. So,
Really?
yes, it does. So it just kind of shows you.
Well, it's like temperance organizations in Ireland. They have very limited memberships.
But as far as serving and then the service organizations, there was problems after each war of the returning veterans trying to get into the Legion, the VFW, and so forth, depending on where it was. I mean but we've slowly evolved out of that sort of criteria. And the other thing too is women. How active are women in the AMVETS? Because that's the thing that we're always pushing for.
Yes, strangely enough, I mean, we still don't have a great percentage any more than some of the other VSOs do. We still have difficulty assimilating them. They just don't seem to want to join. But once they do join, they seem to take on leadership positions within AMVETS.
Well, presently, the state commander of the DAV is a woman, Betty Brown.
Correct.
And the state commandant of the Marine Corps League is a woman, Evelyn Remines.
And the state commander of the American Legion is a woman.
Yeah, our first female commander for AMVETS was, I think, in 2001. Was the first female to be the state commander of AMVETS. We have now a lady from Ohio who is the national second vice commander. So I expect that in 2 years or so, she will be the first female national commander of AMVETS. So it seems as though once they get in, they can assume leadership positions very, very quickly.
And we're finding out that you're right. There's a hesitancy to come into the organizations, but once they come in, most of them feel welcomed and equal to the other veterans that are there. And that's our goal, since we're approaching probably 15 or even 20% veterans being women.
All of us in the veterans community, we've been fighting the stereotype. There were a bunch of old guys sitting drinking down the end of the bar telling war stories, when our mission is so much broader, and we do so many other things.
Not only for veterans, but also within the community itself.
Absolutely.
We have a lot of community programs for children and education programs, essay contests, and so forth.
Yeah.
And this is one of the ways we're trying to get the word out on all the things that we do.
Yep.
Now, the AMVETS, do they have a post home or a meeting place nearby in Maryland?
Unfortunately, nearby meaning nearby Bowie, no, we don't. Our post that's in around this area meets very faithfully every month. We meet at national headquarters, but we do not have a post home in this area.
Yeah, the national headquarters is in Lanham.
National headquarters is in Lanham, but our 4 post homes are really out in Western Maryland. We have one in Frederick, one in Thurmont, one in Middletown, and one in Hagerstown. Although we have post homes that scatter any place from, or posts that meet any place from Cumberland all the way to Denton on the eastern shore.
So they share post homes like other service organizations do.
In many cases, they'll meet at a community center, they'll meet at a VFW hall, they'll meet at American Legion Hall, or vice versa. In Waldorf, they meet at VFW. So we have them all over, but they don't have their own homes.
But the DAV and the Marine Corps League both have one post home in the state. Each have one. The Marine Corps League has a detachment in an old firehouse in Baltimore City, and of course the DAV meets down the street on 197.
Well, there aren't a lot of DAV post homes.
No.
Just, I mean, they usually
National doesn't like them.
Yeah, and most of the places have an American Legion and a VFW.
Right.
And that's where everybody else meets
Yep.
anyhow, because most of us are wearing multiple hats anyhow. So
Yeah, strangely enough, that situation reverses in Western Maryland, where VFW and American Legion actually meet in AMVETS homes. So it's really strange. But the cooperation amongst all the veteran service organizations is amazing throughout the state. So it's really, really good.
well, it's because we have similar goals and our focus is similar.
Yeah, I lobby for most of the veterans bills, and I can't think of a single occasion when we sang out of a different page of the hymnal. I mean, we're always, the same thing that we want.
And now, we've all been members of the Prince George's County Commission for Veterans.
One time or another.
One time or the other. Jerry was
He was
Vice Chairman.
Vice Chairman. And Andy, you're still there.
I am still there.
Okay. So what's happening currently with the county?
Well, the county is still organizing, strangely enough, trying to find the vision and the charter of that organization is a little difficult, and how it fits inside because it's younger than most of the places are. For instance, VA at National is what, 50, 60 years old. VA inside the Department of Maryland is 30, 35 years old. But inside Prince George's County, a veterans organization is less than 10 years old. So they're still trying to find how to groove that inside the legislative body and inside the county council. But it's getting better. The council actually asked the commission for its opinion on a couple bills this year, where we were able to go before the council and testify as to where it would go and where it would help and where it might not help quite as much as anybody thought it would. So they're starting to think of us as an organization, starting to think of us as a body of expertise that can be called upon to help. What we're also doing is it's really surprising that if somebody said, what does a veteran in Prince George's County need? That answer doesn't come off the tongue quite as quickly as you might think it would, because there was such a wide category of veterans. So finding the needs of the veterans and trying to find how do we get those needs brought into a county that might be able to do something about it is a difficult spot. The other thing that surprised me about from serving in the Prince George's County Commission is that we get lots of organizations that come to talk to us during our meetings predominantly. And there are organizations out there that will do absolutely anything and everything on behalf of a veteran. The problem then stems in matching the veteran who needs that to the organization that provides that. And there's no real easy mechanism available right now to be able to make that happen. That's what I would love to try and
They've never really
find
found a place to put it in the bureaucracy. Originally, it was
commission-
going to
the
be
commission
directly,
itself?
it was going to directly report to the county council, and that never really happened.
Yeah, the commission reports to the Department of Family Housing.
Right.
But since you two were on the commission, I believe, what's happened inside the Department of Family Housing is they've actually hired a staff for veterans. There is a veterans division.
Who's in charge of it, Andy?
Curtis Cutler right now. And Mr. Curtis Cutler is a retired veteran. He's served a long time in veterans. He's done this kind of stuff before in other organizations and in other places across the United States. But he has been hired solely to be able to take veterans requirements and push them through Department of Family Housing and up to the council.
Yeah, the older veteran with a homeless veteran, his needs are quite different than the young veterans at Bowie State and on the GI Bill at the University of Maryland.
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe this is an old soldier speaking, maybe, but I see fewer people staying for the full term, so to speak. There are a lot of people that I meet that have served 4, 5, 6 years. And 4, 5, or 6 years, their needs and what can be provided to them is significantly different than the needs of somebody who's been in for 22, 25
When
years.
we were in the service, you had like in the Marine Corps, you had the guy with 4 hash marks who was a private, and he'd work his way up. They don't put up with that in the service anymore.
no more.
And I mean, it was unheard of to drop a guy with a good record after 6 or 7 years, but they're doing that now.
Well, I remember, and this gets back to folks our age, where the ailments that really are traced back to our service, you get that break because you didn't keep your records up. And I tell people over and over, I said, I was enlisted for 4 years. I couldn't get off the base fast enough. And when they say, well, make sure you go over to the hospital or the clinic to get checked out, you walk in, you say, hey, I'm fine, just initial here. And then it's not until later on you find out that, some of the things that you had suffered through while you were in the service really now relates to hearing loss, tendonitis, and all this other kind of stuff that you should be getting a benefit for, but you don't have a record to help you prove the link. And so one of the things we keep trying to tell people is when you get out of the service, sign up for the VA, make sure your medical records are in there and kind of get started with that kind of stuff. Yeah. But I learned my lesson because when I went in the second time, and I went through my retirement physical, they said, how you doing? I'm a terrible wreck.
I remember.
Everything. Everything hurts.
Everything hurts.
Everything hurts.
So I have to tell you, I was a retiring officer out of the United States Army, and I was much the same way as you were. How fast can I make this whole process go and move on with the rest of my life and go to my family and do whatever. So I know in my case, I simply did not pay enough attention to the process to be able to make sure that things were correctly documented because I might need them documented later on.
Right.
That was my fault.
Well, but the problem of it is, as you know, you sign for most of the enlisted guys. You sign up for the 4 years, and you get in there, and as soon as I can get out of this thing.
You're
you know,
counting
the better-
days
Yeah,
from
that's
boot
right.
camp.
Yeah, you had a short timer calendar
got
after you
3 years.
completed boot camp.
When do you get discharged? 3 years, 7 months, 8 hours, and 26 minutes from now.
Yeah.
And a wake up.
So, but yeah, these are some of the lessons that
And you never
learn.
think of things that, I mean, I had 20/20 vision when I was in the Marine Corps, but I got glasses from eye strain. And my great heroism was grading English and history papers at the Marine Corps Institute.
Well, we can understand why you'd have eye strain for that.
Yeah. I'm constantly embarrassed by my heroic deeds in the service.
Now, the other thing you're on is the Maryland State Veterans Commission.
I am.
And where does that fit in with the state?
Well, the Maryland State Veterans Commission reports to the Secretary of Veterans Affairs, and we are directly subordinate to them, to him. What we try and do, there are about, if you haven't been to one of those meetings, there's about 30 people that sit on that commission. All the congressional districts are represented, all the VSOs are represented. There are about 30 people that sit on that committee. So the experience in there is really vast.
Who's
And,
the chairman now, Andy?
Fred Schindler.
Oh, he still is.
Fred Schindler is still the chairman. He's an at-large representative rather than being the AMVETS representative. So I have assumed the AMVETS representation on that commission. So yeah, and Fred does such a wonderful job, and we may never let him take off.
Well, he survived the partisan change. Which speaks well for
Yeah.
him.
So yeah, and that commission does wonderful things in terms of being able for us to get firsthand what the Department of Veterans Affairs in the state of Maryland is doing, and what they're looking to get done. And we, on the other hand, have a responsibility of saying what's going on in our locales or in our organizations and being able to push that up to them. In many cases, that's a requirement that says we can't do this because of, and to see what the Secretary of Veterans Affairs can get done with all that. It's an amazing organization for dialogue. I've never seen one quite that good to be able to take part of the state government and a series of representatives and being able to push information back and forth. Absolutely wonderful organization.
What are some of the issues that they're handling now?
Well, the newest one. I mean, sooner or later we're going to have to get to this, and that's the legislation that's going to come up this year. We as commissioners were invited to the governor's announcement just a few weeks ago that said the governor is looking for 100% exemption for military retired pay.
Right. Presently, it's the first 10,000.
Yeah. So obviously the governor has laid that on the table, but he's obviously given a lot of emphasis to the Secretary of Veterans Affairs to try and make that happen, and to try and push that through all of his representations. Yeah. So I'm sure we haven't met since that announcement. We're going to meet in a couple weeks now. But I am pretty sure that that's going to be a large topic of discussion, as are a number of other things concerning veterans. Over the last few years, you know, we've now have veterans on a driver's license. That's because of the Secretary of Veterans Affairs efforts, to the best of my knowledge.
Many veterans who are watching our show, they ought to check on the internet and see all kinds of businesses give a 5 and 10% discount if you're a veteran. And now you can go take your license down to MVA. They used to charge $40 for it. It's now free.
Now free.
Because I just took mine down recently, and there's a state law that anybody, that is as valuable as a driver's license. That establishes you. If you're a veteran on your driver's license, you are a veteran, and they can't challenge you.
Yeah, and make sure you bring some proof that you were a veteran.
Bring your driver's license.
Your DD-214 is required.
DD-214. Well, it used to be required, but now they take other forms.
Oh,
so
really?
check the web page really carefully, because they take other forms of identification.
Wow. They have to, but the state law, they have to accept the driver's license if it's got veteran on it.
Yeah, I mean, to get the veteran on it.
To get the veteran on it.
Yeah, you have to go down the MVA with your DD-214.
Yeah, they wouldn't accept my retired military ID.
Really?
Yeah, this is about a year or so ago. They said we need a DD-214.
Yeah, they're supposed to take that.
Okay, so anyhow, yeah, well, whatever. It depends on who you get. You know,
Yeah.
it's like
Yeah,
a lot
and in
of
fact,
But
they're
a number
supposed
of
to- they're
big-
supposed to be able to take orders as well.
Yeah.
If you have your last letter orders, they're supposed to be able to take that as proof of veteran. So there are lots of capabilities. The difficulty at MVA is not all the MVA personnel are trained in what is an actual veterans
Yes.
documentation. So
Well, I went down and did mine fairly recently and had no problems. It was
yeah,
very
yeah,
simple.
it's usually pretty clean and pretty
Pretty
quick.
simple.
Well, when you're a judge, I would think that there would
There
be.
may be that too. You know?
He probably didn't even have a number.
If you have as much gray hair as I do, then everybody figures, he must have been in sometime.
Finished the Civil War.
So let me talk to you quickly about the Maryland Veterans Trust Fund.
Okay.
Also administered by the Secretary of Veterans Affairs. The trust fund is a place where if a veteran has difficulty with mortgages, fixing his car or doing whatever, that veteran can actually go to the trust fund, seek out a grant or a loan to try and help him or her out of that particular position. The trust fund is growing. It's about 8 years old now, I guess. But
It's
the
a
trust-
checkoff on the checkoff, isn't it? Did that pass?
Pardon me?
Is it a checkoff on the income tax form? I can't remember whether
Not that one. Not that one.
it
Definitely.
failed. It failed. I
Yeah,
think, yeah.
soon.
See, we have problems with the House Ways and Means Committee.
Yeah.
Veterans bills like the Senator Peters always introduces a bill to increase the exemption for military retirement. It passes the Senate 47-0, goes over to the Ways and Means Committee.
And they don't even vote.
They don't
Yeah,
vote.
don't even
See,
vote,
years
yeah.
ago, when I was there, we passed a House rule that all committee votes had to be made public. We had been private before that. So now they get around that. If anything looks like it has a political constituency, it just never comes to a vote. And when I was there, I was vice chairman of the Ways and Means Committee, and we had a clear-cut policy. The last voting session, we cleaned the clock. Every single bill got a favorable, unfavorable vote. Now they're hiding behind it.
Yeah.
And people are beginning to discover who on the Ways and Means Committee are responsible for this kind of people who give us lip service in public and then just,
So let me tell you about the trust fund, if I could, just for a little bit. The trust fund is a pool of money that veterans can apply for, either on a grant or on a loan. Now, where does that pool of money come from? Typically, in the last few years, it's come from donations, whether or not it was from veteran service organizations or other organizations or corporations. With the help of Secretary Owings, over the last couple of years or so, a couple of years of really hard work, they've managed to pass a bill that says, all that loose change that people have at Maryland Live, if you have loose change or loose credits that you're not going to use, you can deposit it now in a box. Every casino has a box, and people are depositing their loose change, loose credits in the box. And the box is starting to significantly fund this trust fund. So it's amazing how little loose change can really affect
it's a
something
great
good.
program,
Yeah.
and we all owe a great debt of gratitude to both Fred Schindler, the chairman of your commission, and to George Owens,
Yeah.
who does a wonderful
Yeah,
job.
they've done
at
a
the
great
cabinet
job of
level.
being able to get that passed.
As a matter of fact, when Secretary Owens was here, he said, we're looking for people to help.
Yeah.
Because the trust fund has grown so much.
Yeah.
And that's just a great thing. But once again, people have to come forward
Yep.
and let us know that there's an issue. And that's like with everything else. We tell them, you need to stop by, you need to see us,
Yeah.
and find out about the benefits
Yeah.
you earned.
Just as we had the difficulty we have in Prince George's County of matching requirements to resources, that goes all the way up.
And now there's so much resources and from so many different places. If you're struggling, it's your own fault because you haven't asked.
Well, either that or you haven't heard. I don't know how to solve that problem. But trying to get that word out, the word of the available resources to the right people who need that is difficult. It's difficult not to crack.
Well, it's hard to believe, but we made it through another 30 minutes. We want to thank Andy Martell, who's the Maryland Executive Director for AMVETS, and his many other titles that he has. And we also want to thank you for watching Veterans Forum. But it's important for you and your family members to stop by the American Legion or the DAV and find out about the benefits and the support that's available to you. So we'd like to see you come out. They're open from noon until late in the afternoon and the evening. And we also have a service officer every Monday at the DAV from 7 to 9 o'clock. You don't need an appointment. And they'll help you through the VA and get the service benefits that you have earned. And we want to thank you once again for watching Veterans Forum.